Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is Chad here with another In the OT podcast for BetHubb Sports Blog.com. Today we're breaking down Major League Baseball as there has been some extremely significant news in the last 24 to 48 hours with some player transactions, and we will start down in South Beach in Miami as once again this Marlin organization has proved why they are the laughingstock of the league and have to be considered one of the most embarrassing pro sports franchises going on right now. And it all starts up top with those owners, Luria and Sampson, who are nothing more than a bunch of snakes. The way they've handled the situation down there, they completely conned the fans into paying for the new stadium that they got this year. They went out in the offseason. They made a big splash. They wanted to prove that they were committed to putting talent on this roster. They went out and signed Jose Reyes. They went out and signed Mark Burley. They went out and signed Heath Bell. They tried to get Albert Pujols. They brought in Ozzie Guillen to be the manager last year, getting everything all set up to throw these veteran players and the manager into the mix with a pretty good young nucleus of players, and they don't even give them an opportunity to play one full year together. Yes, I understand that a slow start to the year, but you know what? They did turn it around to some degree. Heading into the All-Star break, they were around 500. They were not that far away from actually being in a playoff spot, and I know that they've gotten off to a slow start here since that time and have probably fallen out of contention for the playoffs. But you know what? You can't give up on this idea of bringing all these players after 1 year. I'm not saying that it was going to work out long term, but you've got to give it a little bit more time than that. Sometimes it takes some time to get the right chemistry within, an organization and bringing in all these new faces. So to me, this ploy was put together here more just to fake out the fans, believing that they were actually going to see some talent stay here long term, because we know the history of this organization of almost every time them getting top end talent, them being moved out of town not too far after they start to have some fairly good results on the field because they don't want to pay these guys long term. And one of the guys that they did commit to paying long term happened to be superstar shortstop Hanley Ramirez. Well, at least he was playing like a superstar up until the last number of years where his play has really gone on the decline. And they traded him yesterday to the Los Angeles Dodgers in return for Nathan Eovaldi and Randy Chiotier. He's owed $14.5 million the next 2 years, and I never liked this move here because they simply did not get enough back. I'm sorry, Eovaldi is at best going to be a number 3 or 4 starter, and Randy Chiotti is just a veteran middle reliever who's really not going to offer much to you. And I know that, the Marlins will say, well, they wanted to get rid of his contract. He was a cancer. He was a poison in the locker room, addition by subtraction. Well, you know what? They could have dealt with this in a much easier fashion. Why on earth would you go out there and sign Jose Reyes in the offseason when you already have an all-star shortstop? And don't go ahead and tell me that it's going to work with him moving over to third base because we saw A-Rod and Jeter. That was a bit of a different dynamic over there. You have to understand the mindset of a Jose Reyes who's shown that he can be selfish at times, immature, and lacks a bit of mental stability. So why would you even bother trying to get this guy to commit to going over to third base? I never understood that from the get-go. And then, you try to get these guys to work together. It was a disaster waiting to happen. They should have made a decision in the offseason. It's one or the other. If you want Reyes, fine. Then you get rid of Ramirez right off the bat, or you just don't sign Reyes at all. And then maybe you could have got more assets in the offseason when everybody knew or didn't know that you were trying to trade him like they were now. And for the Dodgers, I love this move because of the fact that there really isn't much risk to them. They don't inherit a long-term contract. It's just 2 more years. They need as much offensive help as they can get. And when you look at their lineup outside of Ethier and Kemp, they do not have any consistent production whatsoever. And if this team wants to make the playoffs, they're going to need more offense because the pitching staff, they're getting mileage out of guys that, it's very hard to think that they're going to be able to keep it up long term with the likes of a Capuano and an Aaron Harang. And Billingsley's inconsistent. We know what Kershaw brings to the table, but they don't have good enough pitching after that. The bullpen's meh. So they're going to have to try to put up some more runs because when it comes to going up against a team like the Giants in the division, their starting rotation is better. And although they might not have 2 great hitters like Kemp and Ethier, they have a little bit more balance in their offensive lineup. So at least now this puts them into play for the division, if not the wild card. I believe that Ramirez will play better here with the change of scenery and might be revitalized, going to a new atmosphere, a new organization. And let's not forget, this guy's still in his mid to late 20s. He's got a lot of good baseball left to offer. If his head's set straight, we know he can be extremely productive and one of the better hitters in Major League Baseball. So it's a real win here for the Dodgers. Now, the other trade they made was getting rid of Ramirez Sanchez and Omar Infante to the Detroit Tigers. I understand that he was an unrestricted free agent at season's end, and they probably had zero intention of re-signing him. Well, so at least from that perspective, they get back a half-decent prospect, Jacob Turner, who started a few games this year. And for Detroit, I don't mind this move here at all. I think Ramirez Sanchez can be a decent pitcher. He's never going to be an ace of a staff. Obviously, that role is reserved for none other than Justin Verlander. But you know what? When you look at guys like Doug Fister and Rick Porcello and the rookie Drew Smyly, they really aren't getting tremendous consistency out of those positions. So it's nice to bring a Sanchez in who could fill out the rotation as the number 2 or 3 starter. His ERA has been consistently under 4 the last number of years. He does have a bit of heat that he can throw and strike some guys out. So that's what they like to have in American League, pitching staffs, when you can rely on a powered offense like they do to get the big outs with the K-ball, which is what Sanchez brings. So good move for Detroit, who's played great baseball recently and has regained control of that AL Central division. So that breaks down what happened with the Miami Marlins. We'll quickly go over to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Very excited and happy to see Neil Huntington continue to add players and bring in Wandy Rodriguez. When you look at the Pirates last year, they're in a similar spot. They went out and brought in the likes of a Ludwig and a Lee to try to help their offense. It didn't really work. They sort of had that breakdown in the second half last year, but I think they learned from that, and I think now that they're in a similar position that they were 1 year ago, they're going to take advantage of learning from those mistakes and play better baseball. This is a team that is not built around any superstars. I guess you could say McCutchen is, but after that, they really do not have a ton of offensive ability, and then from a pitching staff perspective, they don't have that superstar ace, but they do have 5 guys that they can roll out there that can give you a good start at any time. In particular, James McDonald's having a great season, AJ Burnett a bit of a revitalization, and then you look at guys like Bedard, Karstens, and Correa. These are all mediocre pitchers, and I believe that Wandy Rodriguez is better than those 3 that I just mentioned and could slide in there and give them a little bit more depth. And it's nice to know that they have 6 quality starters they could throw out there at any given time to give this Pirates team a chance, especially when they go up against other teams' back end of rotation. So that's the way I see all the big trades and going on in the last 24 to 48 hours of Major League Baseball. It's Chad here with another In the OT podcast for BetHubb Sports Blog.com.